Good morning, guys. My name is Lorena Algeciras, and today I will interview a very special person. His name is Jhon Witt. My dream is to pilot an aircraft. Jhon Witt has done it as a hobby. Today, select to join Witt because I admire his learning in the air. Okay, John, why? The first question is, why did you decide to select aviation as a hobby?
Hi, Lorena. In answer to your question, I was always fascinated with airplanes as a young boy. I was in my late 20s when I learned to fly and received my private pilot's license.
So, the second question, when did you fly to a plane the first time?
I learned to fly at Somerset Airport in the state of New Jersey, which is on the east coast of the United States. It was at a small, privately owned airfield with a single runway and no control tower. It was important to communicate my position to other aircraft flying nearby on a specific radio frequency. This is one of the first things I learned.
So, the third question, what was your feeling when you flew the plane the first time? Thank you.
My first flight was with the manager of the airport. We departed at sunset on a calm summer evening in a single-engine, four-seat aircraft. It was magical to see the distant city lights come on. I was able to see the countryside in a new way from about 3,000 feet above the ground. It was fun and exciting. I was able to use the controls of the plane on that first flight, and we returned to the field for a night landing. I was hooked on flying. After 10 hours of flying with an instructor, I was finally able to make my first solo flight around the flight pattern and land the plane. Later, I did some cross-country trips that emphasized navigation and returning home safely. I flew to several distant cities with control towers where I had to communicate properly with the tower. Finally, I had to pass a written test and complete a check ride with a federal government pilot in order to receive my license.
Okay, the fourth question for John White is did you worry about the security while flying?
Lorena, we were always concerned about safety, checking the fuel tanks to make sure we had enough fuel, running up the engine to be sure that the oil pressure and temperature were correct before taking off, constantly looking around for other airplanes, planning the flight before departure, including a weather briefing. These were all safety-related activities that we engaged in order to have a safe trip.
Well, the five questions. Did you have any dangerous situations while flying?
Yes, once I was on a night training flight with an instructor. We were flying to a distant airport about 120 miles away. After some time passed, my instructor was asking me questions about the performance of the plane. I was so busy flying the plane that I didn't understand the point he was trying to make. Slowly, the distant lights of Phoenix, Arizona came into view, a city of 2 million people. I saw the control tower light of our smaller destination airport, and we landed there without any difficulty. However, once on the ground and getting ready for the return trip,
Thank you, John White. The good experience. The seven questions. I sorry, the six questions. What is the reason that you stopped live flight?
flying is a very expensive hobby. The hourly rental rate for a small single engine plane like I was flying was about $100 per hour. By that time, I had moved to a city with cold winter weather. Flying conditions were much more difficult, and I needed to save for retirement. So I reluctantly gave up flying.
It's okay. The 7 questions. What type or recommendation would you give a person who wants to start this career?
As a hobby, the path I took was typical, starting with a single engine aircraft. There's a progression of experience to more complex aircraft and higher pilot ratings, and those are available to anyone who wants to put in the time and energy to get those ratings. As a career, though, becoming a military pilot is probably a better path. The training those pilots receive is extensive, and the government pays for your training. And eventually, this puts the pilot in a good position to become a commercial airline pilot, which is much more difficult starting from the position that I started from, flying a little airplane.
Thank you. The 8th question. How much do you think a simple plane can cost today?
The single engine aircraft that I flew was manufactured by Piper Aircraft. These days, the cost of that plane would be approximately $150,000 in U.S. currency. Very, very expensive. That's why I always rented a plane. It was much more economical, but of course, it did limit the types of trips I could take just because of the cost factor.
Thank you. The number 9. What rule do you consider that you can't omit when you are flying?
There are several things to do before takeoff on any kind of a flight, and these are critical safety things. Always check the fuel tanks visually before takeoff. Don't rely on what the gauge says in the cockpit. Look in the tanks directly with your eyes. Always check the weather forecast before leaving on any kind of an extended trip. Always have a flight plan written down, including radio frequencies, alternate airports for landing. Try to prepare for all situations that might occur. And of course, keep an eye on that oil pressure gauge. That could lead to a catastrophic engine failure. So those are the kinds of things that all pilots would do before leaving on a flight.
Thank you, Jhon Witt, for accepting my invitation. It is a pleasure for me to be able to interview a person with a great career in aviation. Thank you very much.